Welcome back to Art Playground with Mrs. Vaughn. Have you ever wondered how some artists end up very famous and other artists who are really good really never get acknowledged? So I have a fun story for you about a Japanese artist named Yayoi Kusama. Yayoi was born in Japan. She was trained in Japan in the traditional arts, and ran across an artist named Georgia O'Keeffe, and she loved what she saw. If you've watched some of my videos, you will remember Georgia O'Keeffe is the American artist who enlarged flowers so big they went off the sides of the page. So Yayoi wrote her and said, I really admire what you do, and I really desire leaving Japan and seeing more. She got a letter back from Georgia O'Keeffe that encouraged her to do so. She said, go to New York, go establish your career. You know, this is an opportunity. And Yayoi took it, came to New York City. And that is the beginnings of how she became one of the most famous Japanese artists. Yayoi Kusama, also known as the Princess of Polka Dots, was born in 1929 in Japan. When she was 10, she started painting with polka dots. From a very young age, Kusama experienced hallucinations in which a single pattern would engulf everything in her field of vision. As Kusama explains, one day I was looking at the red flower patterns of the tablecloth on a table. And when I looked up, I saw the same pattern covering the ceiling, the windows, and the walls. And finally, all over the room, my body and the universe. She loved drawing and painting, even though her parents did not want her to be an artist. She loved art so much that even when she could not afford art supplies, she used mud and old sacks to make art. She trained at the Kyoto School of Arts and Crafts in traditional Japanese-style painting called Nihonga, but she was inspired by American abstract impressionism and moved to New York City in 1958. Why pumpkins? As a child, pumpkins were a major part of her diet during World War II. Her family relied on pumpkins to feed them, having grown fields of pumpkins in their nurseries. Pumpkins represented comfort and security. When she was in New York, she met and inspired important artists like Andy Warhol of the famous Soup Can series. Her work in New York included what she called infinity net painting. Those consisted of thousands of tiny marks obsessively repeated across large canvases as if they continued into infinity. She returned to Japan in 1973 and 2 years later sought treatment for obsessive-compulsive neurosis. It was then she entered the Siwa Mental Hospital. She is open about her mental health. By choice, she lives in the hospital even now, 45 years later, and says art has become her way to express her mental disease. Okay, artists, time to get our supplies. You need copy paper or watercolor paper. I do not recommend construction paper because it starts to fall apart with all this marker. You need a pencil and eraser, a Sharpie, and colored markers. So I sketched out 3 different pumpkin shapes, just to be helpful. The first is pretty traditional. The second one is tall and thin. And the third one's a little lopsided because that is not unusual in pumpkins. They are not symmetric, they just are organic, and sometimes they don't grow in perfectly even. We are going to simply outline what you want your pumpkin to look like. First the body and then the stem. And the next part I'm going to work on are the lines that go from the top of the bottom to show the pumpkin's texture. Whoop, pulled out my Sharpie too soon. So I'm going to go from the top to the bottom and make like a letter C. Top to bottom, letter C. Then I'm going to go from the bottom to the top and make a backwards C, and by golly, that looks like a pumpkin. Next, I'm getting my Sharpie, and I'm using a Sharpie on purpose because I'm going to be going over it with other colors. If you just use a black pen, it's very likely to smear. With the Sharpie, you are ensured the pen's not going to go anywhere once you get it on that paper. I'm only outlining the body of the pumpkin and the stem, and those lines going down, we are doing something different with it. We're actually not going to trace the lines, we're going to use dots, like our artist, Yayoi Kusama, used her dots. We're going to be using 3 different sizes. The first one is the largest size, and it goes right on that line that we drew. And I'm spreading them out, giving them some distance. I'm coloring them in, and I'm going to do that all the way to the bottom. And I go back up to the top again, and I'm going to do my medium-sized dots, and they're going to go on the outside of the large ones, and they can go in between as well. It's kind of up to the artist here. What I'm doing is I am recreating those letter C's without lines. The polka dots will make it look like there is a line there without a straight line. It's using dots. We will have created a visual that it is a line. And then I'm going to head back up to the top again, and I'm just doing the smallest dots, which is simply the size of my Sharpie tip. And I'm putting them in between the large, the medium, and I'm doing some on the outside as well. By golly, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to speed up the video and let you continue tracing those lines with your Sharpie dots. Now for the background. Our artist this week does a very dark background with her pumpkins. However, you're the artist. What do you want to do? I'm going to do kind of I'm going to call it a giraffe print, but it's really not. I'm just going to fill up most of the background with very strong colors so the pumpkin pops. You have fun doing whatever you wish to do as your background for your pumpkin. Last step is simply choosing the colors you want to color in your pumpkin project. If you enjoyed visiting Art Playground today, please subscribe to our channel and ring the bell.